I'm Chris Eden-Green, I'm the CEO and founder of EG Media, and I'm the creator of Steam Locos In Profile. The idea of slips initially came about sort of over a long period of time and in no time at all, sort of thing, which makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, I've always been fascinated by steam trains ever since I was a small boy. They tell me I caught the bug even before I was born. Funny old story, but from a very early age, I grew up sort of watching railway documentaries that were intended for a much older audience. So anything that was on national television to anything that was on release direct-to-video or later case direct-to-DVD. So I'd always admired how steam engines looked on the screen. You know, to my mind, at least, there's no other machine that looks as beautiful as it does dangerous and intimidating. You know, so from a very early age, I knew that I wanted to do something based around railways, but I didn't pick up my first video camera until I was about 19, so quite late on, actually. And around that sort of time, I started to get involved with a group of enthusiasts on the internet, who I became quite good friends with, and they're still some of my closest friends today. And we got quite friendly. We started going on holiday together. And one of the things we used to do was these video diary style documentaries about our days out. You know, it would be the railway that we visited from our point of view. So I thought, well, that looks like a bit of fun. I'll get involved with that, see how that goes. I wouldn't dare show the results of those videos now. They're so cheesy and bad and boring by comparison to what I do now. But they were the first steps of my my sort of transition from a vague interest in railways to something quite passionate, really. And we, as the years rolled by, people started saying to me, you know, you got a knack for this sort of thing, Chris, why don't you take it up? But at that point, it was more of a drunken thought at the back of the head. I didn't really take them that seriously, much as I should have done. And it was around this time that I started looking back on some of the things that I'd watched as a kid, saw how they sort of had aged over the years, and I remember thinking some of them were just a little bit sort of dull, kind of. I mean, granted, most of them were still fairly good, like BBC's Great Railway Journeys, or at the opposite end of the scale, you got the likes of Castle Vision's Express Steam series and so on, Steam World Archive from Telerail, yada yada. But I remember thinking, why aren't some of these a little bit more exciting? And then I saw Top Gear racing Tornado to the north, and I thought, yes, you see, that's how you do it. That's much more like it. And then shortly after that, sort of lying in bed at night, age 22, it suddenly hit me. We live in an age where it's so easy for you to get your own name out there through the internet. You just shoot a few videos, upload them to YouTube, bish bash boss, job done. So I thought, wouldn't it be great to make a sort of a magazine style show, internet show, for the railway enthusiast? So slips just went from there, really. It's very complicated to decide what's going to feature on the show, simply because you're governed entirely by what's running, where it's running, when it's running, and if you can get to it. And to a point, of course, like artistic judgment. I mean, artistically speaking, if you say one thing and then show another, they don't quite go together. So if, for instance, you say the Black Fives ran in Scotland, you can't sort of get away with showing one with a couple of green marked ones on the Bluebell. It has to be in the Highlands. Or conversely, you can't say that the A4s were capable in excess of 100 miles an hour and just show them pottering around at 25. You know, it doesn't quite blend, I feel. But most of it's governed by practicality. You know, if you can't afford to get to somewhere to film it, then you can't do it. Simple as that. So, and I mean, to start with, the first couple of episodes, I wanted to get some of the more popular classes out there just to get some of the basics covered and say, this is where we're going, this is where we are, you know. So that's why you saw the Black Fives, the Terriers, and the Castles being covered in the first couple of episodes. So they're all quite high profile, they're all quite popular with enthusiasts, and yeah, that's how where we went from there. It takes on average anywhere between 18 months and 3 years to make an episode. Yeah, it's that long. And that's, most of that is basically just getting the appropriate cutaways. Because again, you're governed by the what, where, when and if. So, I mean, it's all very well going down your local line and filming whatever's running there and hoping that it all fits together, but if you want a nice sort of variety of shots, then it helps if you just get about a bit. Conversely, if you plan the filming of an episode sort of months in advance, sometimes years in advance in my case, and yet you're governed by things which can go wrong regardless of your control and are subject to change without reason at the very last minute, then if something does go wrong, you have to alter your plans according to them. You know, as the bystander, you have literally no control over whether or not an engine could fail, because it could fail within a few hours of you going out to film it, you know. I remember one particular scenario was I've been trying to get the Britannias out this year, and that didn't happen because there was almost a 12-month block where every opportunity I had to film both Oliver Cromwell and Britannia was thwarted in some way, shape or form. And it all started with Ollie Cromwell supposedly running a rail tour down my neck of the woods, and I'd planned that out for weeks on end, sort of how many shots I could get within the same tour, could I get from point A to point B before she could, planned this out meticulously to the very last detail, turned up at the very first shot, all ready to go, and the train turned up with a diesel on the front, you know? So that was that plan out the window, and that set filming back by God knows how many months, and it just, things just escalated from there, unfortunately, but those are just some of the things that you have to live with, unfortunately. Much as I would love to get more episodes out more frequently, excuse me, then, but it's just not possible. So many reasons. I mean, the thing is, when you're shooting a show like this, you have to think about it from both a practical and an artistic point of view. So, practically speaking, with Sole Survivors, you have 3 problems which you would have to face. Firstly, if it was just a static museum piece like the Adams Radial just here, or Blue Peter up in Darlington, then you're going to have trouble filling out 15 minutes with just static shot, static shot, static shot, static shot, piece to camera, static shot, static shot, static shot, static shot, piece to camera, static, 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 etc. You know, after 2 or 3 minutes, that just becomes a little bit dull, a little bit boring. Conversely, if the engine's running but it's only running in the one place, say if it's the C-Class on the Bluebell line, then there's only so many times that you can film exactly the same engine in exactly the same locations with exactly the same coaching stock over and over again. You know, again, there's only so many times that you can do that before visually it starts to become a little bit of a snore fest, I feel. And then the third issue that you would have is if the engine was running and it was touring, say if it was the T9 from the National Railway Museum, then you've got to chase it everywhere it goes. And that gets expensive, let alone time-consuming, you know? And there's only so much time and money that you can afford to put forward to a venture like this, you know, especially if you're doing it more for the pleasure than the business. But also, I don't know, there's something I've always found about Sole Survivors that kind of, they either cheat the audience or they cheat the class in some way, shape or form. For instance, if it's not a very good representation of that class, then some people could come forward to me and say, you realise that's not a proper A3 or whatever. And, you know, I may realise that, and I may say I realise that, and other people may think that I realise that, but then there's always going to be some rivet counter who's going to come forward to you and say, you've got this wrong, blah, 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 you know. And that's not really something that you can only take so much of that sort of thing, you know. I'm not the sort of person who does rivet counting, you know. I draw the line at so-and-so is in the wrong livery, pulling the wrong coaches, blah, 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 you know, that's, you know, as long as it's running, that's all that really matters, you know, as long as it's with us. And I think a lot of armchairs tend to sort of overlook that. But on the other hand, I don't know really. I think in some cases there's only so often you can only talk about a certain engine so far before you stop talking about the class that it's representing, and you're talking about the one locomotive that you're constantly seeing on screen. I mean, I tried doing something on Met 1 recently for another project which I've been working on, and I tried writing that initially as a slip, but again, after 2 or 3 minutes, I kind of felt I was cheating the viewers somehow. I can't quite explain why I sort of felt that way, but trying to write it as an ordinary slip, it didn't really seem to work very well. So I'm not sure. In the traditional slip format, the one that's been tried and tested so often already, I'm not sure that it really seems to work. I mean, that's not to say that there are some engines which are unworthy of it. I mean, it would be nice to do something, say, about Duke of Gloucester, because the history of that's phenomenal, you know. Sole survived, the only British Rail 8P Pacific, the only one with 3 cylinders and all that, and given what she went through, that's a story in its own right. But if that's ever going to be done, it won't be done as an ordinary slip, because that just can't work, I feel. It's a little bit complicated, really. I mean, just to start with, I thought it wasn't going to be too much of a problem. You know, when I started planning the episodes, first 4 episodes in advance, I thought you plan them far enough in advance, then surely it wouldn't be a problem to get them out within the time scale you initially envisaged. But how soon was I proven wrong? I mean, to put this into perspective, episode 4 was initially supposed to be the A4s. You know, so within the first year, the first 12 months, first 4 episodes would have the big 4 covered, you know. But as I started to put the Castles one together, I was governed by 3 A4s being active that summer, 2 in particular being Sir Nigel Gresley and Union of South Africa. But one of them was still being bolted together back at Crewe, so I couldn't. By the time that she did enter service in that September, I think, I couldn't find the time or the money to go up and see her and get some cutaways. I only needed a few, just to show some close-ups of her in the final 2 or 3 minutes. But I just couldn't find the time to get up and see her. All the while, the Bullieds one was pretty much sitting there ready to go. I just had to bolt all the bits together, and then it'll be ready for distribution. So while I was putting that together, I sort of kept people in the know as to what the next episode was going to be, and then by that time I was in talks with Simon about the publication deal, and we wrote into the contract, all future episodes shall be kept incognito. So it was only an agreement between me, Simon, and Adam Ashford, who helps me out with filming various odds and sods. So I got episode 4 out, which turned out to be the Bullieds, and episode 5 became the A4s, which followed about 2 or 3 months afterwards. But again, I sort of kept that secretive simply because I feel that I can't really keep my promises. So, and as soon as you tie yourself down to a deadline, but you're governed by things which are beyond your control, it gets harder and harder to sort of keep that deadline. And by the time something goes wrong at the last minute, you've then got to announce to the world that, oh, episode 5 isn't going to be the A4s, it's going to be the Panniers or whatever. And I feel that in some ways that's going to tell other people that you're kind of mucking about and you haven't got your act together and so on. Plus, I feel that it's a little bit unfair on the audience who've been looking forward so much to seeing the A4s, and then it turns out to be a Western machine, you know? So, I think that it's safer for me that the audience don't know, and I think the audience are better off sort of being kept guessing. I just think it's easier all round. Well, after I'd done about 3 episodes, something happened between me and Google which kind of upset me a bit. We're not going to go into too much detail, if that's okay, but Simon Martin from the BRWS Ltd saw that I wasn't really doing too well at that time. So he offered to take me under his wing. He offered me the use of his channel, because he had about 10 times the number of subscribers that I had, and God knows how many million channel views by that point. Might be exaggerating things a little bit, but at the end of the day, I was sort of in his shadow, and I was sort of in other people's shadow by that point. So we got talking, and eventually we signed a deal, and in October 2012, all my videos began to be published via his channel. So I'd finish them off, I'd then send them to him, he would then upload them on his channel, and he would then give me the appropriate share of the proceeds, which was really nice of him. I mean, he will be sweet and say to me, "You don't need me to be successful, Chris," and other people will say you're better off on your own, but you can't argue the fact that Simon had 10 times the number of subscribers as me, and if I didn't reach out to those subscribers, then I wouldn't have reached out to as many people as I have done now. So, without question, he helped. Without question, he helped. It was never meant to be a permanent arrangement, though. I mean, it all came to an end a little bit sooner than certainly I was expecting, I will confess, and when it happened, I was a little bit upset to begin with, but the whole reason why it happened, it was nothing malicious, we didn't fall out or anything like that. It was only because he just didn't have the time to act as a publisher. You know, because we both have work outside of what we do on the internet, you know, and he's 10 times more busy than I am, I think. And it just wasn't fair on him to sort of look after me as well as try to look after himself and God knows how many other people. So we eventually decided to call it a day about 12 months or so after we commenced it. But there was nothing malicious about it. I will make that absolutely clear. He did not get rid of me. You know, people have come forward to me and say, "Why did he get rid of you, Chris?" Didn't happen, you know. We talked things over. We decided that it was probably better off for me, in the future at least, if I was to continue under my own steam. And we calmly called it a day. But I'll always have great admiration for Simon, and indeed everyone else who's helped me to make the show so far. You know, Adam Ashford, Sam Brown, Ryan Hagan, who's helped me promote the thing, and God knows how many people who've put me up. You know, if ever I needed a couch to sleep on while I'm doing some film work further afield. But yeah, I owe Simon a great deal, really. It's only fair to say. Honestly, I think the key to any success of any kind of artist these days is a very loyal fan base. You know, you could argue that it's down to dedication, you could argue it's down to commitment, you could argue it's down to promotion, you could argue it's down to someone who insists on doing as much himself as he possibly can. But if nobody's going to watch it, then you might as well have not taken it up in the first place. You know, if there's one thing that the digital revolution has taught me these last 18 months to 2 years or so, it's that good things are so easy to overlook in the sea of just eternal nothingness, I feel. Because it is so easy for anybody to shoot a video, to upload it to YouTube, and for people to watch it, you know. But there's so much content out there that it almost becomes impossible to sift through this massive archive of stuff before people get to something that they genuinely want to watch, you know, before they think, oh, this is interesting, I think I'll watch this. And it's even more remarkable, I feel, that they have enjoyed watching it and they keep coming back for more, you know. I mean, to my mind, you can make the greatest film in the world, you can write the greatest songs in the world, you can take the greatest pictures in the world, and you can promote them to your heart's content. But then people can still ignore it, you know. It's no longer a case of how good you are. It's how much people like you and how much they're prepared to like you, the lengths that they're prepared to go in order for you to succeed, for you to get there, you know. To this day, I'm still amazed that anybody comes back and keeps watching it, you know, keeps watching Slips, because there's so much else that they could watch, you know. You could argue that it's primarily down to promotion, you know, and to a point I will concede that if you don't get your name out there, then nobody's going to notice you in the first place. But again, you could advertise yourself on every corner of every street and every billboard and every website, yada, 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 that the world's ever seen. But people can still have the choice of saying, no, don't want to watch that, off you go, because they're fed up with having it sort of shoved under their noses. You know, so to this day, I'm amazed, really, that anyone watches Slips. I'm amazed that anyone still wants to support and still wants it to succeed. And I think so many artists, kind of past and present, have tended to overlook the fact that it's the fans who put you there, it's the fans who need attending to, it's the fans who you've got to look after and you've got to please if they're going to keep coming back for more. And I only bring this up because I feel that in some ways I have been cheating the fans. I feel that I have been a little bit self-indulgent, and I can't help but feel sorry for people who want to, who are waiting for what seems like an eternity for their favourite class to be covered, you know. And I just feel really sorry for them, and I feel that I haven't been particularly nice to some of them as well, you know. Especially to the ones who keep making requests. And I know I've said some unfortunate things about the occasional person who's come forward and said, I think Chris's next video is going to be a Western hydraulic, you know, completely oblivious to the fact that the show's called Steam Locos In Profile, no diesels. But they still watch it, you know, and those are the people who you've got to look after. You can't choose your fan base, you know. So I'm forever grateful to the fans. They will go down in history as the show's biggest asset. Well, the future, there's God knows how many videos in the works. I think I went through this on my to-do list on the other day. I've got about 27 videos in the works, and the worst part of it is I've got another 6 to commence in the new year. So there's going to be plenty for me to be going on with. It would be nice as well if I could move on to other projects besides Slips, you know, things that are more kind of entertainment or magazine orientated rather than just a straightforward review, you know, with good and bad thrown in. But it would be nice, for instance, to do sort of biographical things on, well, one of my university projects, I'm planning to do something on the old Great Central line, so that should be quite interesting. And I've looked at the prospect maybe of doing something on, an updated something on railway safety, so the history of famous railway disasters, perhaps. It would be nice to undertake. As for distribution, a lot of people have asked me the question about DVDs. Now, the answer is yes, Slips can go on DVD, and I would love it to go on DVD. But here's the thing. The audience has got to commit to buying, and there's got to be enough people who are willing to commit to buying. You know, it's all very well saying, yes, I would love to see this on DVD, yes, I will buy this, Chris, I will definitely buy this. But we live in an age where there's so many sort of loopholes and ways around getting something for a price. You know, instead you can get it for nothing. You know, with online torrenting and so on, that you've just got to be really careful not to fall into that trap. You know, because I mean, I saw some of my stuff only the other day being available somewhere, not as videos, but as MP3 downloads. Now, somebody has taken the trouble to ensure that that what you could pay for, you could effectively get for nothing. You know, so there's that danger to overcome, and of course, if enough people are not willing to buy it, then you won't be able to make back the cost of putting it onto DVD in the first place. You know, it's all very well saying, yes, we're definitely going to make a batch of 1,000 copies, but if you don't shift that 1,000 copies, if you only sell like 20 or 30, then you've made a huge loss. You know, people have got to commit to these sorts of things as much as you've got to commit yourself to producing them for your audience. So yes, it can happen, and yes, I would love it to happen, but things have got to happen for me in order for me to make it happen. So we'll just see where it goes from there, really.